Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Jamana Tira Banachari Hera Jamuna Tira Banachari Hera Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jagopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Jashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamana Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribraja Acharya Ashtatara Sita Shishimada's Divine Grace Abhoy Charanara Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribraja Acharya Ashtatara Sita Shishimada's Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brindi Ki Jai ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Bashari Gaur Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Sri Maya Purna Vidvit Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Chamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Thai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate. We are reading. It says the temple room renovation started at 8:30. And I am famous in the manor for going overtime. So I won't speak much because we always have lots of questions. Well, I'll try not to speak too much, so we don't go overtime. Kaloyam dvi paradyakyo Nimesha upacharyate avyakritasya anantasya yanander jagadatmanaha kaloyam dvi paradhakyo nimesha upacharyate avyakritasya anantasya yanander jagadatmanaha kaloyam dvi paradhakyo nimesho upacharyate avyakritasya anantasya yanander jagadatmanaha Jagadatmanaha Nimesha upacharyate Vitasya anantasya Yanande jagadatmanaha. Ladies? Nimesha upacharyate Jagadatma Nisha upacharyate Shanantasya Jagadatmanaha. Word meanings. Kalaha, eternal time. I am this, as measured by Brahma's duration of life. Dvi paradha akyaha, measured by the two halves of Brahma's life. Nimeshaha, less than a second. Upacharyate is so measured. Avyakritasya, of one who is unchanged. Anantasya, of the unlimited. He certainly, Anande, of the beginningless, Jagat Atmanaha, of the soul of the universe. Translation. The duration of the two parts of Brahma's life, as above mentioned, is calculated to be equal to 1 nimesha, less than a second, for the personality of Godhead, who is unchanging and unlimited and is the cause of all causes of the universe. So, who can tell me how long is Brahma's life? Who knows? 311 trillion years. So, 311 trillion years for Krishna in the span of eternal time is a moment, a flash in the pan. It is nothing. 311 trillion, that's a lot. Can you even imagine 1,000,000 years? It's difficult. Let's speak of 1 billion. There are 8 billion people on this planet. We are each one of the 8 billion. We don't feel very significant, do we? 1 out of 8 billion. It's not so significant. And here we're talking about 311 trillion years. That's insignificant. Wow. Hare Krishna. And we're thinking, we're very important. And this life is very important. And it's so hard to be Krishna conscious. It takes so long. You ever feel like that? Why does it take so long? And Prabhupada's, it's not very long. It's only 100 years. Hare Krishna. The great sage Maitreya has given a considerable description of the time of different dimensions, beginning from the atom up to the duration of the life of Brahma. Now he attempts to give some idea of the time of the unlimited personality of Godhead. He just gives a hint of his unlimited time by the standard of the life of Brahma. Brahma. The duration of the life of Brahma is calculated to be less than a second of the Lord's time, and it is explained in the Brahma Samhita 548 as follows. Yasyaika nishvashita kalamathavalambhya jivanti loba vilaja jagarantanataha Vishnur mahansa iha yasya kala vishesho govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, whose plenary portion is Mahavishnu. All the heads of the innumerable universes, the Brahmas, live only by taking shelter of the time occupied by one of his breaths. Hare Krishna. So he breathes out for 311 trillion years, and breathes in for 311 trillion years. Think about that today. Give you some perspective. Interesting perspective of time. The impersonalists do not believe in the form of the Lord, and thus they would hardly believe in the Lord's sleeping. Their ideas obtained by a poor fund of knowledge. They calculate everything in terms of man's capacity. They think that the existence of the Supreme is just the opposite of active human existence. Because the human being has senses, the Supreme must be without perception. Because the human being has a form, the Supreme must be formless. And because the human being sleeps, the Supreme must not sleep. Srimad Bhagavatam, however, does not agree with such impersonalists. It is clearly stated herein. Shri Radha Gokulananda ki Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravai Shanyavari Praschad. The Srimad Bhagavatam, however, does not agree with such impersonalists. It is clearly stated herein that the Supreme Lord rests in Yoga Nidra, as previously discussed. And because he sleeps naturally, he must breathe. And the Brahma Samhita confirms that within his breathing period, innumerable Brahmas take birth and die. If God doesn't have senses, if he doesn't breathe, if he's not personal, then it makes your spiritual life easier because there's nobody to surrender to. So basically, you do whatever you want. Just like those of you who are married, when you first get married, you realize very soon you're living with another person who has desires, or even in the brahmacharya ashram, you realize that, right? You live in a room, you like to go to bed at 11, and that person likes to go to bed at 8:30 or something. You like it freezing cold, you turn on the air conditioning in the middle of winter, and he likes it like Bombay. He turns the heat on a day like this. So we all know in terms of relationships, because people have desires, we have to accommodate those desires. So sometimes you just feel like, maybe I could get my own room, and then I wouldn't have to accommodate anyone but myself. So impersonalism is a little bit like that. If God, maybe I can just get rid of God as a person, which means people have desires. And if we want to be devotees, we have to fulfill his desire, but if he's impersonal, then impersonal beings don't really have desires. So then you don't really have to surrender. But if you don't surrender, there's no question of having a loving relationship with someone who's not a person. I don't know how you do that. Did anyone figure that out yet? How you love something who's not a person. But just like in Bhagavatam, it gives an example that the universe is the body of Krishna. But if the universe is the body of Krishna, how do you offer something to Krishna in the form of the universe? What do you do? Throw it up in the sky or whatever? You need a person to accept it. So, anyway. Srila Prabhupada said that surrender comes from love. So when we talk about surrender, it's like a scary word, but when you love, you surrender. You can't surrender without love. Surrender is a natural consequence of love. So how can you love an impersonal being, and how can you surrender, therefore surrender to an impersonal being, because there's no love. So impersonalism may seem like a philosophical understanding or a certain aspect of understanding God and the universe, but there's a psychological aspect, which is avoiding a personal relationship. And it's interesting because Prabhupada says in the Gita that sometimes someone will take to impersonalism because of bad experience in the material world in personal relationships. And so they think, well, these personal relationships I had weren't very good. I don't want a personal relationship with God. It'll be the same. So let's make it impersonal. That's interesting, isn't it? Something to think about. Or when you meet someone who has an impersonal understanding, it's something you could present. Like, why would you want an impersonal being? Like, would you want to marry an impersonal, like just an energy? I'd like you to meet my wife. Where is she? Oh, it's this light over here. Well, what do you guys do? Well, we can't do anything. She's just light. She's just energy. But we don't have any fights, so it's pretty good. She doesn't ask me anything. She doesn't have any demands. So an impersonal being has no demands. Yeah. There is complete agreement between Srimad Bhagavatam and the Brahma Samhita. Eternal time is never lost along with the life of Brahma. It continues, but it has no ability to control the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Lord is the controller of time. In the spiritual world, there is undoubtedly time, but it has no control over activities. So we understand time as something that has a beginning and an end. And in the spiritual world, it's said nothing begins and nothing ends. So how can there, and Prabhupada's saying, but there's time. How can there be time? It doesn't begin and end, right? But there's the existence of what's called transcendental time. So if you look at Krishna's pastimes, they happen at different times within eternal time. So there's an evening, and there's a morning, and there's an afternoon, but it never ends. It's just the time is there for Krishna's service. So Krishna utilizes transcendental time because he has different pastimes, and he needs to have them at different times for different ways that they can be relished by himself and his devotees. So sometimes you hear about parties. You ever hear about parties in the spiritual world? You know, when you go to a party, you dress up. I don't know. I never went to many parties, and I didn't dress up much, but I'm assuming that especially if it's a high-end party, you really dress up, right? Show your stuff, who you are, you know. So Krishna also goes to parties and dresses up, and goes to parties in the evening. And everyone's waiting for him to see how he's going to be dressed, because he's a good dresser. He knows how to dress. Yes. He continues. Time has no ability to control the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Lord is the controller of time. In the spiritual world, there is undoubtedly time, but it has no control over activities. Time is unlimited, and the spiritual world is also unlimited, since everything there exists on the absolute plane. All right, so I'd like to do a little meditation now. And if you have psychological problems after this meditation, I am not responsible. Someone's head might crack during this meditation. I would like you to imagine something that has no beginning and no end. It always existed. There was no time when it didn't exist, and no time when it will not exist. In other words, I would like you to imagine the time span of forever. Just go for it. Try to imagine forever. And if you can't, that's not a problem, because I don't think any of us can really do it. But let's try. Imagine forever. No beginning, no end, no middle. Okay, so within that time span of forever, which is, of course, unimaginable to us, because we can't think of in terms of something not beginning and ending, because everything in our experience begins and ends, right? When were you born? I was born in this year as a beginning. So now, within this time span of forever, we have been recycling many, many bodies. Not 100 bodies, not 1,000, not 1,000,000, not 1,000,000,000, not 1,000,000,000,000. We've had so many bodies, your iPhone doesn't have enough space to show the number of how many bodies. It's as we say, it's off the charts. Unlimited bodies. That's difficult to conceive. And now we have this body, and we can't remember those unlimited bodies. And this life is like, it's a spark. It just comes and goes. Now, the reason I'm saying this, because I want to make a point which I think is extremely important. Srila Prabhupada would often minimize things that we thought were really like big problems. Like Shrutakirti Prabhu's book, What is the Difficulty? As the Prabhupada used to say, what is the difficulty? So if you have a problem, you ever have a problem and it's so big that you just you think, I can't even fathom it. And you'd go to Prabhupada and he'd say, just do this. What is the difficulty? And in your mind, it's this is the difficulty is like Mount Everest. And in Prabhupada's mind, it's just a little thing. It's not a big deal. This attraction you have, this lust, this anger, this envy, Nothing, little thing, just a little itch, a little botheration. What's the problem? Why did Prabhupada say that? Because Prabhupada's looking at this life as a flash in the pan. So, you have that saying here? Flash in the pan? Yes? Or is that American? Or we imported it or exported it or whatever? Anyway, this life is, boom, I don't know why a flash, what that means, but it just means a moment, momentarily. We're here in this body momentarily. So when Prabhupada's saying, just tolerate it, what's the problem? And we're thinking, this is a big problem. Prabhupada is looking at life from the eternal perspective, that you have just a few years, maybe 100 years, which is nothing. It is nothing. And so all you have to do within that 100 years is tolerate a few pushings from the body, from the mind, the senses. Tolerate your anger, tolerate your envy, tolerate your lust, greed. Just, it's not, so for Prabhupada, it's like, what's the problem? If you do this, you can go back to Godhead in this life. And we're saying, Prabhupada, but this life is so long, and it's so hard to tolerate. And Prabhupada is saying, what is the difficulty? And it was amazing being with Prabhupada because he could turn, a mountain of difficulties into a piece of dust. And with that statement, what is the difficulty? And when he said it, you felt like, yeah, this is not a problem. But Prabhupada's mission, which he repeated over and over again, it's repeated in his books over and over again, was to get every living entity in the material world back to Krishna. That's his mission. And he wanted to do it in one life. That was his goal. Like all of you sitting here, Prabhupada wants you to go back to Krishna in this life. And so when Prabhupada would say, it's just a little toleration, it's only 100 years, from his perspective, this is nothing, because as a result, you can go back to Krishna in one life. And all you have to do is tolerate. Now, I have to say something about toleration, because I think it's extremely important to understand. Every one of us, because we have a material body, we have very similar desires. We all have tongues. We all have stomachs. Do you like to eat? Raise your hand if you don't like to eat. Okay, we've got agreement here. It's nice to agree on something. Have you ever been, I think we'll get 100% agreement. Have you ever been so hungry that you could not do anything else? You had to eat. Raise your hand if that ever happened to you. Yeah. I can't. Prabhu, can you do this? Just wait, I have to eat. I can't think. And some people biologically, when they're hungry, they get very angry. We call it hangry. Hungry and angry. Don't talk to me, Prabhu, I'm hungry. You won't, just trust me on this. Just stay away at least 10 meters till I eat something. Otherwise, it's not going to look good. Not everybody has that. Some people get dizzy if they don't eat. But we all know when we're really hungry, we pretty much think, where's something to eat? That's what's on our mind. We've all been there. So we have bodies. So now what's interesting is that I think we all tend to think that for someone like Srila Prabhupada or a realized soul, they don't have to tolerate these things because they are transcendental. One time, in addition to what Prabhupada normally was eating, the devotee decided to make Prabhupada carrot halva. Carrot halva is ground up, shredded carrots cooked in ghee, I believe. Is it ghee or butter? Who has made a carrot halva here? To me, it seems like ghee. Ghee and, let's just say, you grate, that's not chopped up. You grate carrots, you throw ghee on them, or butter, and sugar, and cook it. And it's very buttery and sweet. Like it's too buttery and too sweet. And so they made this for Prabhupada, and when the devotee came in, Prabhupada was like licking the bowl. You know when something's good, you like lick every last drop. He was licking the bowl and with his hands. And he said to the devotee, "Do not make this anymore. Like, this is not good for me, and it tastes so good that if you make it, I will eat it." Have you ever been in that situation where you eat something and you know it's not good for you, but it's so good you can't resist? Yeah. So we all have had that experience because we have material bodies. Another time, one devotee came to Srila Prabhupada and said, "Srila Prabhupada, it is so difficult to control my tongue." And Prabhupada said, "Yes, I know. I also have a tongue." So even you're very advanced, you have a body, you experience the pushings of this world. Just yesterday, I was reading a story. Very interesting. This is so interesting. Because when we think of Prabhupada, we think, well, Srila Prabhupada is transcendental and nothing affects him. In this story, what happened in 1972, some of the GBC called a meeting, and they didn't even call a meeting for all the GBC. There's just some of them. And they did something which Prabhupada did not want them to do. So number one, they formed a meeting without all the GBC, which you shouldn't do. The GBC are the leaders of the movement. You have to have all of them. And they didn't tell Prabhupada they were having a meeting, and they did not tell him what the meeting was going to be about. And they wanted to centralize all the temples in the United States, so it would be one organization, whereas Prabhupada had said every temple should be a separate non-profit organization. He had his reasons for that. Some of them were legal, and some of them were devotional or practical. And so Prabhupada was so upset when he got this news that he told the temple presidents, "You do not have to follow the GBC anymore." You're all like, "Where's that letter? Where's that letter? That was temporary. But he was so upset with the GBC, he just like disbanded the GBC for a period of time. And so I was reading in this story, and Prabhupada was saying, like, what is going to happen after I leave if you do such things like this? And then Prabhupada said, "This is putting me in so much anxiety, what you're doing, that I cannot eat and I cannot sleep." Isn't that interesting? The pure devotee, this is ISKCON is his baby. So this is transcendental anxiety. But still it's affecting him. He can't sleep. He's disturbed by what's going on. And many times Prabhupada said, "I cannot translate if there are too many management problems." And then another time, this is really interesting. Many of you know the story in acquiring the temple in Juhu, but just to give you a summary, the man who sold the land upon which we wanted to build the temple had no intention of actually selling the land. His intention was to create complications for us so that we would not be able to get the proper permits. And within the agreement, or he thought, he made an agreement, I'm not sure it was, but his plan was there would be an agreement that if you cannot get all the permits that you need to build your temple, then you cannot acquire the land. The land comes back to me. So he basically wanted to steal money. And you can read about this, but just so you know, our lawyers were paid off by him, so our lawyers were working for him. They weren't working for us. It was bad. Anything bad you could imagine about what could go on in a situation like this went on like this. So the GBC at that time was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and it was so disturbing. The man who sold the land to us hired gundas, mafiosos, to come, and we had a temporary structure, and come and harass us, and it was just like, Bollywood movie on steroids. It's like you couldn't even create a script this good, It's like that. And the GBC, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was so disturbed by what was going on. It was just constant disturbance. It's like a war zone. We're being attacked. And he went to Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, I am so disturbed I cannot chant my rounds. And Prabhupada said, neither can I. The pure devotee, he's disturbed by these things. So you ever been so disturbed you try to chant and you can't? That can even happen for a pure devotee in some situations. That's the nature of the material body. So here's the important point, and I think this is very significant. Do not think that more advanced devotees are necessarily less disturbed by the pushings and pullings of this world. That's not necessarily the fact. But what is the fact is they're better able to tolerate. And that will be your success in Krishna consciousness, is your ability to tolerate. Because when you look at advanced devotees, you think, oh, well, they don't have to tolerate because they're advanced. Yeah. As long as you have a body, you have to tolerate. Hunger, thirst, right? Fatigue, anger. We all become angry. Envy. Anybody here not envious? These are things we're born with. Somebody gets something and you want it and you don't get it. It's difficult, isn't it? Somebody gets glorified, but actually you're the one who did it and they were just doing what helping you, and they get glorified. That ever happened to you? Pride, it's there. So, please don't think that just because someone is advanced and you look at them and think, oh, they have an easy time. No, they also get hungry. They also get tired. They also are put in anxiety by situations. In the winter, they're also cold. In the summer, they're also hot. But the difference is that an advanced devotee can tolerate. That's so important to remember. When the pushings and pullings of the world are coming upon you, just remember that my advancement is going to be based on how well I can tolerate this. When the Sankirtan men were in America, were going out to distribute Prabhupada's books, they would go to shopping centers during the day. And shopping centers, I don't know about now, but in those days, it was all women doing the shopping. The men were at work and the women, at least in the 70s, women worked, but not as much as they do now. So the men complained to Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, we're all day, we're just young men trying to be brahmacharis and we're talking to women all day. That's, like generally brahmacharis lived on top of mountains. I didn't see anybody. And Prabhupada said, it's just a little itch, just tolerate. And so that's how Prabhupada was looking at everything. And he was saying that because, yes, what is the option to tolerate? If you have a desire and it's going to cause devastation in your life, you don't have an alternative, because the alternative, no matter how difficult it is to tolerate something, the alternative is generally worse, isn't it? Oh, but it's so hard to tolerate. Yeah, okay, don't tolerate. Play out the movie. This is what I suggest. Play out the movie of what your life's going to be like if you don't tolerate. What is it going to look like? And it's a horror movie, for sure, a nightmare. So when you look at that, you think, okay, better I tolerate. And the nature of the mind and senses is very interesting. It's very important to understand. The nature of the mind and senses is that the more you give in to sensual desire, the stronger the desire becomes. The more you tolerate it, the weaker it becomes. So when Prabhupada would say, just tolerate, what is the problem? What is the difficulty? What Prabhupada meant is you just tolerate it and it'll calm down. Just tolerate it. It'll go away. It's not going to stay with you forever. The other point, when Prabhupada is saying just tolerate, he's this. Your life it's like that. So all you have to do is tolerate it for a flash in the pan. For a flash, for what does this verse say? For a day of Brahma is one moment. That's a day of Brahma. So what are we in a day of Brahma? We're not even a moment in this day. We're like we're like a fraction of a second in Brahma's day. So just tolerate it for a fraction of a second. And then what happens? You get to meet Krishna at the end of life. Wow. Now meditate on this. This is a beautiful meditation. Many of you know I had a surgery last end of September. And some of the devotees were saying, well, what were you thinking when you were going in for the operation? I was thinking, They told me, they said, well, there's a 3% chance you could die. For those not good in math, that means 3 out of 100. That means for every 100 people that do this operation, 3 die. That's a little concerning, isn't it? Prabhu, take this medicine. It will cure you, whatever it is you have, but 3 out of 100 people die when they take it. Who would take the medicine? Probably, well, it depends how bad the disease is. Well, if you want to go back to Godhead, of course, you'd take it and you'd go back to Godhead soon. But I was thinking, all right, I've been a devotee, whatever, 55 years, I guess, right? 20, yeah, I've been a devotee 55 years. I said, it was good, and if now in the next few hours I go back to Godhead, well, sounds good to me, If I could meet Krishna, like, hello, that's good. So the meditation is that we've been in the material world for unlimited lives. We don't even know how many. We can't calculate. And in this life, at the end of this life, you could actually meet Krishna and go back to Krishna in his Leela. Meditate on that. And if you don't faint after meditating on that, I feel sorry for you. Because that's the most amazing thing that is happening to us. Unlimited. What are we, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70? So, and at most, the youngest person here in the room, maybe is going to 60 years, right? 60, 70, 80. That's not very long, is it? Tattva, we're in our 70s, and we're like, well, that just went by like that. It's like, just the other day I was 20, became a devotee, isn't it? It's like, phew. We go back in the 80s, I was passing through Bhaktivedanta Manor, and I was passing through here in like 1976. Yeah, it was just like yesterday. It's not much. So, if we can tolerate for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, for some of us, it's not even that long. If we can just tolerate and chant the holy name without offense, then Prabhupada said, and Prabhupada said, you could go back to Godhead in this lifetime. This life, this could be your last life. Is that amazing? Isn't it? This could be your last life. In a few years, you could be dancing with Krishna. Is that amazing? Millions of lifetimes without him, in a few years you could be dancing with Krishna. And all you have to do is be a little tolerant and chant the holy name without offense. Now, some of you are thinking, oh, Prabhu, really? One life? You could do it in one life? I don't know. I don't think so. Interesting verse in Bhagavad Gita. Man mana bhava mad bhakto. Man mana, think of me, bhava, become, mad bhakto, my devotee. Man mana bhava mad bhakto, madhyaji mam namaskuru. Worship me, madhyaji mam namaskuru, and pay obeisance. Bow down to me. Mam evaisyasi, and you will come to me. And then Krishna says something very interesting. Satyam te, without fail. You will come to me without fail. Like doubter, you doubt. You doubt me. You will come to me without fail. When you say without fail, what do you mean? It's like guaranteed. Prabhu, is that true? Yes, without fail. And then, just to make sure you get it, Krishna says, Pratijani, I promise. You will come back to me without fail, I promise. Pratijani, because you are my dear friend, Priyosime. So, if you think, no way, Prabhu, how can you go back to Godhead in one lifetime? Krishna says, you become my devotee. Well, of course, that's a big thing. You become my devotee, become my pure devotee. You serve me purely. You chant the holy name purely. In this life, you'll come to me. Pratijani priyosime. I promise you this. Priyosime, because you're dear. I promise you this. Why? Because I want you to come back. That's why. I want you back. It's not like, look at you. I don't know about you. I don't know if you like fit in here in the Leela. That's not how Krishna thinks. You ate too many sweet balls yesterday for breakfast. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about you. No, Krishna wants you. So he's saying, I promise you will come because I want you. It's not like he's against you. The only person against you is you. He's not the one against you. It's not him. Don't blame him for your problems. The only one against us is us. And if we want to go back to Godhead, we can. And we take the holy name, we chant it without offense. We do pure devotional service. And it's only one life, and this could be the last. What do you think? And all you have to do is tolerate the mind and senses for one life. And that's all the advanced devotees are doing. That's the difference between an advanced devotee and everybody else. They're better at tolerating the same thing. I once had a really interesting experience. Back in the day, when you went to India, you had to get shots, I think cholera, or I don't know. I don't remember. You get some shot. Was it cholera? You get some shot. And the cholera, you kind of like get a little cholera or something. You get a little fever and a little body aches and you're tired. And so all of us on the Sankirtan party, we all took the same shot the same day. So we all had the fever and it was so interesting to see how different devotees were tolerating it. And some were just go on to Sankirtan all day and they just tolerate it. And others like, I can't go out, I have to go to sleep. And it was the same pain, it was the same headache, it was the same fever. Isn't that interesting? So your ability to tolerate is like, that's the essential trick for being Krishna conscious and the essential trick for chanting the holy name. Trinadapi sunichena, tororapi sahishnana. Tolerant like a tree. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So it looks like we have 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I lost the paper. End class by 8:25. Impossible, but we'll try. Okay. I have to give very short answers to your questions. Yes? Oh, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for your class. You mentioned tolerating. What if a devotee can't tolerate and they're really, really struggling? At what point do you feel it's the right thing to do to approach a therapist?
Well, I mean, it's wise, for those of us who are not good at tolerating, it's wise advice to not get near the things you can't tolerate. Like sometimes, this sounds funny, it's not meant to be a criticism, but I know some Indian families from India who have difficulty tolerating their family. And they actually come to England or America and find jobs. And I said, why'd you come to America? And they said, to be away from the family because it was too difficult. So sometimes there are things which, for us particularly, are difficult to tolerate. And maybe in our whole life we'll never be good at tolerating them. It could be a biological thing. It could be a psychological thing. It's like some people cannot tolerate repetitive. The brain is wired. So if there's a they can't sleep. Like a clock that goes. I'm one of them. So everywhere I go where there's a clock, I take out the battery, otherwise I'll be awake all night. Or somebody snoring. That repetitive. I think I'm wired that. Someone told me that some people have brains wired that way. So it's not that I'll ever be able to do so well at tolerating certain things. I think we have. So in those situations, we may want to just be aware that I need to remove myself from that, situation, whatever it is. I can't. I take prasadam. I don't go in the prasadam room. Why? Because there's too much prasadam. I can't. I'll eat too much. I just make my plate and leave. And I walk away so far that it's a hassle to walk back to get seconds. So or like I put my phone up in the attic of my house at night so I don't go look at. Sometimes you have to lock it up. Give my wife the key. Don't give me that key till 9 a.m. Sometimes. So there are things like that you can do. It's really interesting because I gave a workshop several times on vows. And one thing I realized that when you make a vow, you have to create environments around you so you don't break the vow. It's not like, okay, I made the vow and everything's good because I'm so determined. But if you're so determined, you will also not do certain things which could cause you to break your vow. So when you make a vow, you have to change things a little bit. Well, I have to chant 16 rounds, so I can't stay up late at night. I have to follow 4 principles, so I have to be very careful around those 4 things to not get too close to them. So that's a place to start and understand. It's also understanding our human nature. Like there are certain things which we can't. Prabhupada did not like slamming doors. When he's trying to write, and it's like, he'd get very upset. And sometimes someone would be chanting, and he'd go, tell them to leave. He couldn't concentrate. It's like, it's the holy name. Some devote, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada's listening to this. Get him away, So there is, I think there is wisdom in like, okay, just move that person away because I have to, Prabhu, could you chant outside? It's also interesting. Some devotees in the temple, they chant very loudly. And one time Prabhupada was there and someone was chanting very loudly. And also when they were playing Prabhupada's tape, and he said, Prabhupada's recording, and he said, you're supposed to hear your own chanting, not someone else's chanting. He said, why are you playing my recording? You're supposed to hear yourself, not me. So you ever been in a temple when someone's chanting really loudly and you can't hear? Yes? No? Maybe? Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to tolerate. So what to do? Either they have to go outside or you have to go outside. So, you'll get frustrated. So I think there are some things which are, by nature, difficult to tolerate, but if we have to tolerate them, we have to make material adjustments. If it's beyond that, there may be psychological issues. That's true. It's like that. Maybe that could be healed, so you could tolerate it. You had, like, if you have bad experiences with something, then in the present something reminds you of that, and it triggers you, and all of a sudden you're like really upset, and you don't know why. It's because this is reminding you of something. And what's even more interesting, it might be reminding you of something that you don't even know what it is it's reminding you of. That's possible. So yeah, if that happens and nothing else works, it might be useful. And the whole idea of if anyone ever had to use therapy, it's only so I can become more Krishna conscious, and I'm not able to do it any other way because the problem is it's so deep. Like that. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. At this rate, class will have to be moved into the next room.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Ruji. Sometimes we might be blamed for things which we have not done.
Yes.
So in that situation, to what degree should we tolerate and to what degree should we give the clarification?
It depends on what the ramifications are of not tolerating and the ramifications are of tolerating. Because sometimes if you don't say anything, it's going to make the situation worse. Because people have to know, no, it was him, it was not me. This is the devotee that needs to be corrected, or this is the devotee that needs to be instructed. Where if there's no consequence, and it's not going to matter, in the overall scheme of things, if you're blamed or not, you might just want to say, okay, I'm sorry. That's what Krishna did when Jai and Vijay were offending the four Kumaras. Then Krishna came out and said, I'm sorry. He said, they're my servants, so I take responsibility. I heard a story once, Satsrupa Maharaj apologized for something he didn't do because the devotees were fighting, and he said, I'm sorry, and it stopped them from arguing. But it wasn't his fault. So, there's a story, a young man wanted to get married, and he asked his father, he said, well, how do I prepare myself? And he told his son, he said, well, say I'm sorry. The son said, why should I say I'm sorry? The father said, just say I'm sorry. He said, but I didn't do anything wrong. He said, just say I'm sorry. But why do you want me to say I'm sorry? I didn't do anything. Just say I'm sorry. And he said, okay, I'm sorry. He goes, now you can get married. You'll have to sometimes say I'm sorry, even when you didn't do anything wrong. But sometimes it's necessary to patch up a relationship. Hare Krishna. Yes. Well, we should let one lady. We have to have equal opportunities here. At least we're two ahead now.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a very inspiring class. I have a question. Many times I hear devotees say, I will do that and that in my next life. So, how we can gently encourage each other that we should...
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to mention that. Whatever you're struggling with in this life, if you don't resolve it, you'll be struggling with it in the next life. So it's like, you want to graduate this year or you want to fail the class and take it next year. You'll still have to take the class and you'll still have to learn. What's interesting is like whatever you are challenged with in this life, you were challenged with in the last life and you didn't resolve it. So now you're here dealing with it. How does that feel? Oh, I wish I didn't have those anarthas, right? So I think that's important to recognize, that it's like the question is, in what life of those millions of lives that we had or could have, what life are we going to actually tolerate the mind and senses? Because we have to make a choice to do it in one life. So is it going to be this one, the next one, 10, 20? And as I said, a Shastra says, when you give into a desire, the desire becomes stronger. So if we give into the desire in this life, then we take birth again, and that desire could even be stronger than it is now. It's possible. So you have to do it, you have to jump in the ice cold water, either, today, tomorrow, the next day. Just do it now. That's at least how we should be thinking. Yes? Hare Krishna. It's not going to get any easier in the next life. Have you ever procrastinated and found that it was easier to do after you procrastinated? And not only that, Prabhupada is begging us to do it in this life. So he's, it's not just, I'll do it for myself, do it for him. Prabhupada came to give us Krishna consciousness to perfect it in this life. So he, then Prabhupada said, don't make me come back. So, this is what Prabhupada wants. Whenever I am challenged by something that I don't want to do or desire that I don't want to control, I just think, I know Prabhupada would want